I have come to believe that the greatest and most disabling form of naivete in Washington is excessive cynicism. There are people who are so afraid of being taken as naive that they automatically assume the worst about everybody. I think people are going to see far less difference with the Democrats taking over in the financial services regulatory area than in virtually any other area of public policy, because we did work together on things like regulatory relief, and we have more to do. We have more to do yet in the deregulation. I'm just saying it. One of the things we did was to try and reduce the reporting requirement from the banks to the financial detectives, and far too much has to be reported now, in my judgment. We weren't doing anything for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, at least most of us. For me, the motivation was housing. We were doing something for housing. And I agreed with those who argued that because of the market's perceptions, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac got this great benefit in being able to borrow money cheaply, but that the benefit was not being adequately returned to the public. Now, there were two things you could have done about that. You could have reduced the benefit. You could have cut back on their ability, in effect, to borrow as cheaply. Or you could leave that benefit in place and distribute it more fairly. That's what we chose to do with the Affordable Housing Fund. And I do want to address this thing about the bubble. No, I think the bubble is an entirely inappropriate metaphor. Let me just be very clear. Houses ain't tulips. Houses today, even with a drop in housing prices, are more valuable than tulips were however many hundred years ago we had the tulip business. I think it's a good thing that housing prices are dropping. If you speculators get stung, that's icing on the cake. The cake is that people can afford to buy houses now. And a 10% drop in housing prices is a good thing. Housing was overvalued. But let me make this distinction and why I think it's not a bubble. And I'm just thinking about this as Mike was talking. It was maybe housing suffered from irrational exuberance. But bubbles in history have not been cases of irrational exuberance. They have been cases of exuberant irrationality. And there really is a distinction. Irrational exuberance means you get all carried away with something that is basically a good thing. But the exuberant irrationality is when you start thinking that tulips or some of those dumb ideas on the internet where they were selling things that nobody in his right mind ever wanted to buy, those were excessive. Fundamentally, I don't think there was a crisis, and I do think the end result of a 10% drop in many parts of the country will be a more rational and healthier housing market. I'm pretty good with words, but I'm not so good with things. I have had a lifelong struggle with things, and the less I am the one responsible for dealing with them, the better off everybody is.